This is a public service announcement on the dangers of processed foods. Once, food shortage was a major concern for Americans. After the Second World War, technological advances in food production led to a new era that was characterized by an overabundance of inexpensive food and relatively little physical activity. This was accompanied by the processed food industry beginning to capitalize on the American need for fast and convenient food. Food manufacturers, fueled by government subsidies of corn and sugar, relaxed trade agreements, and new ingredients and preserving technologies, flooded grocery stores and restaurants with cheap, highly processed foods. These processed foods contained high amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, often requiring no refrigeration or preparation before being eaten. They also contain numerous artificial preservatives, but they were designed as snack foods, so they would be eaten continuously throughout the day. According to the National Health Services, a processed food is any food that has been altered in some way during preparation. Since the term processed includes basic preservation techniques such as freezing, canning, baking, or drying, as well as more complex additives such as high fructose corn syrup, many foods are given the same label as processed. Though they all fall under the category of processed foods, a distinction must be made for foods that are highly processed and foods that are only processed to a small extent. Foods that have been processed minimally are foods such as canned tomatoes, milled flour, or oatmeal. Since they don't use complex chemicals, they are generally a boon to mankind and to our convenience. Highly processed foods generally are high in calories with very little fiber and little antioxidants. These include foods such as sugary drinks, most pastries, or any other form of junk food. What makes such ultra-processed foods so dangerous are the large quantities of unknown ingredients that are being added to them, such as shortening, high fructose corn syrup, or aspartame, to name a few. With the expansion of ultra-processed products, more than 20,000 new foods are being introduced into the marketplace every year, creating the illusion of choice, yet the majority have the same basic ingredients. Grocery stores now have entire aisles devoted to snack foods and soft drinks, as well as large sections of frozen, ready-to-eat foods. And not just supermarkets. 1/3 of the US dollar is spent on eating out services. Food companies, whose main job is to sell food, not promote public health, rebrand their products to convince us that they are healthier through the many choices that they offer. So in lieu of all these ultra-processed foods, what can the average consumer do to try to lead a healthier lifestyle? It is not simply a matter of getting back to the basics in the kitchen. We live in the most complex food environment in history, which no longer consists of the local grocery store, family table, and occasional restaurant, but has food available at every conceivable place humans can go. However, as long as we convince ourselves that we have no time to engage with food, and as long as food continues to be marketed as a commodity of convenience, we will only further become reliant on the companies that market to us. We create a cycle of dependence that becomes further normalized with every generation. Food is the very reason we have survived and thrived as a species, and not merely because we found enough to put in our mouths. Food, eating, and feeding are the center of family life. They are recursive, everyday practices that shape and are shaped by our beliefs, practices, and social interactions. Food conveys meaning to others and ourselves about who we are individually and collectively. So take back control over your food. Do not settle for what is easy and convenient. Go to your local farmer's market and avoid purchasing hyper-processed foods. Try to learn a few things around the kitchen so you're not solely dependent on fast foods. This message was brought to you by Rodrigo Vieira, signing off.